staying with us still on Frontline this morning. Right now we move into the interview segment of the program. When we started the show, we let you know that the government of South Africa has officially apologized to the federal government of Nigeria over the recent xenophobic attacks on Nigerians and every other foreign nationals in the country. But away from that, it is very important to talk about the diplomatic relationship of Nigeria with other countries. Diplomatic relations is built on mutual understanding with accruing benefits, and no nation goes on bilateral or multilateral relationship without making or thinking of its national interest first. And Nigeria aspires to be championing the cause of Africa without corresponding benefit to our national interest. So for this program, for this interview segment this morning, still in relation to the xenophobic attacks on Nigeria in South Africa, we'll be looking at Nigeria and our diplomatic relationship. Nigeria and our diplomatic relationship. I have a guest on the show today who will be rubbing minds together on this topic. It is my pleasure to have Reverend Dr. Julius Olaleye Okonlawon of the senior pastor of Bodija Estate Baptist Church with me on the program this morning. Many thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, ma.
And good morning to you.
Good morning.
Like there has been a lot of news about the xenophobic attack on Nigerians and heavy other foreign nationals on South Africa. And the questions that comes to mind is looking at a lot of benefit that South Africans has benefited from the government of Nigeria in the past. Are we supposed to still find ourselves in this kind of situation?
Thank you very much. It is very, very unfortunate that the South Africans are paying back to Nigeria in such a manner, having contributed immensely to the independence of the nation of South Africa, especially during the period when apartheid was in the front burner in South Africa. Nigeria contributed greatly, just as I have said. As it were, permit me to first state what actually is xenophobia or xenophobic attack. It is simply a dislike of or prejudice against people from other countries, and it has been on the news for some time how South Africans were attacking foreigners, attacking their businesses to the extent of killing some foreign nationals. It is so unfortunate. However, I want to say that before now, it's like the government of Nigeria has not taken adequate step in putting an end to this unfortunate situation, if not in the recent time. Immediately after this last attack, there was a kind of reprisal attack against some of the investments of South Africans
in Nigeria.
In Nigeria. And the government of Federal Republic of Nigeria has maintained a big brothership, so to say, by curbing attackers not to take such a step. And one of the very wonderful steps taken by the government of Muhammadu Buhari is to send envoys to the Federal Republic of South Africa and discuss this very issue with the government. I think it's on the news that the government of South Africa too has sent some emissaries to Nigeria seriously apologizing for what has actually happened. Well, as it were, the relationship between Nigeria and South Africa, quote and unquote, has already been affected. Because even if diplomatic steps are taken and the issues are resolved, there are people with biases already. And these biases will continue to remain with us as human beings. In further to what I've just said, I think the Nigerian government is supposed to learn a big lesson from this
xenophobic attack.
From this episode. And what is the lesson? The lesson is that we need to put our house in order. So many Nigerians that were attacked, just like other foreign nationals in South Africa, they were there. Most of them are there in search of a greener pasture. Hadn't been things are very okay at home, many of these people will not have found themselves in that foreign land to the extent of being attacked unnecessarily.
Okay, if I ask you to, or let me ask you your view on the diplomatic relationship, the foreign policy of Nigeria with other countries. Fine, it's widely reported that the xenophobic attack on Nigerians in South Africa, but I want to believe that Nigerians in other parts of the world, in other countries, are also facing one challenges or the other due to the fact that they are Nigerians. Okay. Now, let me ask you, what is your view about this diplomatic relationship of Nigeria with other countries?
Oh, well, as it were, presently, the image of Nigeria as a country is at stake in most of the countries of the world. And the reason being that some Nigerians, some bad elements who found themselves in those foreign countries have not represented us well. They claim they were there in search of greener pasture and to make life. Unfortunately, when they got there, they started doing some other things. Let me cite an instance. Now, talking about the image of Nigeria globally.
Exactly.
Before the present democracy era, I'm talking about before 1999, when Obasanjo came in, globally, the image of Nigeria as a country was almost at zero level because the military juntas were ruling and they were ruling autocratically. And even as at then, so many nations have been practicing democracy and it's actually working for them. You will recall how the military rulers were deceiving us. They were conducting election, they were cancelling it, and they were doing all sorts of things. But immediately, President Olusegun Obasanjo came on board in 1999. The first thing he did was to work on the image of Nigeria as a nation that has been dented globally. And this involved a lot of diplomatic shuttle by the president himself. As a result of these many efforts, Nigeria was coming into limelight, and Nigeria as a nation was having a new name. Then, at ECOWAS level, Nigeria assumed the leadership of these regional political segments. Also at AU, and also at G7.
Exactly.
You remember immediately after the era of Obasanjo, President Yaradua came on board. Unfortunately, as a result of ill health, he was unable to carry on from where President Obasanjo stopped. And while he was sick, he did not hand over properly. He did not delegate power properly. So Nigeria as a nation became a rudderless ship heading towards destruction. As Yar'Adua was in coma, so to say, Nigeria as a nation was equally in coma until his demise. But immediately after his demise, but shortly before his demise, you remember the incident of one of the Nigerian teenagers, maybe who was arrested for attempting to bomb an airbus in America, maybe Abu Talib or something like that. This further brought down the good image that the nation has been building over time. Try to build over time. And Nigeria as a nation was marked, so to say, as a terrorist country.
So in a nutshell, we say that the relationship has not been that cordial.
Has not been that cordial.
Okay.
However, the only difference is that other nations, especially developing nations, have been exercising caution and have been playing maturity with Nigeria as a nation. This is quite different from the reaction from South Africa.
Okay. You raised the point earlier about the ambassador representing us in various parts of the world. Okay. Now, let me put it to you as a question: that what do you think should be the criteria? You know, we are in a country where everything is politicized. Even the appointment of any political office now, you have to be in politics. But when you're talking about ambassadors, particularly people who are representing us in different parts of the world, do you think there should be some criteria, some requirements that these people should possess before they can represent us in any part of the world?
Of course, yes. You don't suddenly become a doctor, but you go through the necessary process, and so it is for every profession. People representing us outside the country must not be picked because they are politicians. They must be picked because they have what it takes to represent us. What am I trying to say? There are people in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who have been building careers, who have been exposed to international policies, who have been exposed to what it means to represent a nation outside and within. I want to note that these are the caliber of people that the government is supposed to be picking in representing us outside there. By the time you pick somebody who knows virtually nothing about international diplomacy, you can be sure that even when issues are being discussed, you are only discussing with an ignorant person. He or she might not know the extent or the gravity of what the discussion is all about. How much more what response he or she supposed to give.
Well, that's a good point. I'm still having this conversation on Nigeria and a diplomatic relation in reference to the xenophobic attack on Nigerians in South Africa with Reverend Dr. J.O. Okanlawon. We'll go on a short break now, and when we are back, the discussion continues. Do stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on Frontline this morning, and we are staying in the interview segment where we are looking at Nigeria and our diplomatic relation. And my guest is still here, Reverend Dr. J.O. Okanlawon. Nigeria belongs to a lot of organizations: the ECOWAS, that's the Economic Community of West Africa, the ILO, International Labour Organization, and the OAU, the Organization of African Unity. And it seems Nigeria has really contributed immensely to the growth of this organization. But it seems that when issues like this xenophobic attacks comes in, it seems that nothing much is being coming from these organizations. What do you think is responsible for that?
Thank you very much for this question. These organizations, whether regional or global organizations, they have rules and regulations that are guiding them. But permit me to first mention that primarily foreign policy is about promotion and protection of national interest.
Exactly.
Also, if it is a regional organization like OAU or ECOWAS, it's about promotion of African integration and support of African unity. And if it is international, it's promotion of international cooperation for consolidation of peace and mutual respect among all nations and elimination of all its manifestation. As it were, take it or leave it, there are some degrees of politics in all these organizations. And the number one politics is individual nation protecting her own interest. Just as you have asked, this coming together is supposed to be a kind of symbiosis relationship. You benefit from the relationship, I benefit from the relationship.
And every other members of the organization also has some benefits.
Exactly. And probably the stronger nations should help the weaker nations. But the politics therein is that it's like, as long as I'm not affected by any negative event, I'm not concerned. And this is an area that these organizations need to look into and work on. If the aim and objectives of this organization will actually come to play, we have to look into this. This is the time they're supposed to speak out. And I think because of the reprisal attacks and the steps that have been taken by the Nigerian government, some other countries are beginning to speak out and speak against this injustice.
Now, going back to the xenophobic attack on Nigerians in South Africa, would you say the attack is more of immigration crisis or the failure of South African government to tidy up their ends?
Well, there are so many dimensions and so many causes of this xenophobic attack, as it were. There are things that the government of the nation of South Africa supposed to do, supposed to put in place. As a government, they have this solemn responsibility to protect everybody in that country, whether they are indigenous citizens or not, or they are foreigners. But just as you have raised this question, there are other sides to it. For instance, in every nation of the world, there are just two categories of people. We have the good people. I want to believe we have good people in South Africa,
exactly,
just as we have in Nigeria.
Of course.
Also, we have the bad elements. They might be in the minority. So it is not just about the South African government, but we equally have bad elements.
The bad eggs.
The bad eggs who are citizens of that nation. They probably felt, well, our jobs have been taken over by these foreigners. Probably they felt like another side to it is that there are some foreigners who are into illegal businesses, maybe drug peddling, maybe promoting prostitution.
Which are one of the reasons cited for the attack.
Which are one of the reasons cited for the attack. So it's not just about the government of the land, though as before now the government has not been doing enough to curtail the attack. But in the recent time, it's like the government is coming up to do the needful.
Okay. Now you said something about that the image of Nigeria, the image of the country is dented globally. Now my question will now be that what do you think is the challenges, the global challenges that it's confronting that image, or that is darkening the image of the country? Though we've said that it's been dented, and the previous government and the present administration are working towards redeeming the image globally. What do you think could be a challenge to this redemption of the image?
The challenge to the redemption of this image primarily lies on the government of Federal Republic of Nigeria. Just as it has been mentioned that had it been an enabling environment has been provided for the citizens of this nation, probably there will have been a reduction in the number of
people leaving the country.
So there is a need for us to get it right as a nation. Politically, we must practice democracy that is devoid of ethnicity, that is devoid of religious bias. That is the number one thing. Number two thing is that people that are working with the president of the nation, they should not just be politicians. They should be technocrats. People who know what to do, how to attend to a particular situation. For instance, it's going to be a misnomer if you pick a medical doctor and you make him Minister of Works.
Of course.
So the right peg should be put in the right hole. Yes. That is another thing is that the issue of security of lives and properties must be addressed adequately in Nigeria. I think in the recent time there have been grossly a reduction on the issue of kidnapping, and the government is working seriously on the banditry. The other issue that the government have to intensify efforts is the issue of Boko Haram or what have you. So outside all these things, the need for the government to equally work on the power, electricity. We discover that so many jobs depend on electricity. Without electricity, the electricity being fixed, the power supply being fixed in Nigeria, there is little that people can do when it comes to job. So many works, so many employment, or so many job opportunities of a necessity, they will need electricity. So the government have to work on that. Another area is the area of a road. All these things are under infrastructural development. Even people living at the rural area, most of them are trooping to the urban area. Why? Because we encourage them to go into farming, which they are trying to do. But getting their products sold is becoming a big challenge. And the challenge of the Fulani herdsmen who are equally attacking farmers is another area that the government needs to look into. But as long as the government is proactive and is willing to work on all these areas, so many people who are outside there, they will be willing to come back the moment there is an enabling environment for them to operate.
So for Nigeria to really have, we said it at the beginning of this discussion that the relationship has not been that cordial as it's been expected. Now, for that relationship to be cordial, for that relationship to be smooth and to bring gains and benefit to countries, be it Nigeria, South Africa, or any countries in the world, what do you think should be the measures that should be put in place?
Okay, measures that should be put in place. There is a need for these regional and global, what do we call it? This global membership like ECOWAS, OAU, and maybe ILO, United Nations. There is a need for all these bodies to actually wake up from their slumber, to really know what they stand for. That is one. Two, all these member nations should speak with one voice against injustice as it affects any of her member. Another thing is that this we have international laws. We have international laws and policies. All these laws ought to be emphasized from time to time. Each time they come together, maybe for annual meetings. Each time they meet to discuss maybe economy of the region or economy that affects all. All these international policies, so to say, should be emphasized more and more, as it were. I think another area that we need to look into is the area of training and retraining as it affects those who are involved in implementing this law. Okay. For instance, in this ongoing xenophobic attack in South Africa, maybe in 2007 or 2008.
In 2008.
Okay. Some police officers in South Africa were indicted.
Yes, sir.
So, some of this law against that protect the refugees, that protect the foreigners, should be brought to the front burner and be discussed extensively over and over again. And nations should be truthful. By the time a country like Nigeria is into relationship or agreement or diplomatic relationship with another nation, both nations should be truthful, should be sincere, and should stand by what they agreed on. If there are some gray areas, that should be resolved diplomatically.
So in essence, you are saying the aims of all these international organizations has not been fulfilled?
No.
Okay.
No. Has not been fully fulfilled.
Okay. In 2008, we have a similar attack of what happened this year, of the xenophobic attack on Nigerians, and over 60 people lost their life in that attack. This is 2019. It happened in 2018, and it has happened even before 2019, even after that of 2018.
Yes.
Now, looking at this series of attacks that has been happening since 2008, both the federal government of Nigeria and the government of South Africa, would you say the lives, the properties, or the businesses of both Nigerians and that of South Africa is not of major concern for it to have repeated itself?
Well, thank you for that question. Yes, both countries and their properties are affected because the investment of both countries and the nationals are affected. We cannot actually say that is not of a concern to both countries. But you know, I mentioned the other time, there might be a kind of a subtle politicking underneath. At times, a particular government might be speaking out, but telling nationals some other things, maybe secretly. I think one of the leaders, maybe the Minister for Foreign Affairs of South Africa, once said, and it was on BBC News, that one of the major challenges that the South African as a nation has is that the investment or the job of South Africans are at risk as long as foreigners are flourishing in the land. You know, that simply sent some messages to the nationals. And if the nation of South Africa has been serious, has been very proactive concerning this issue, because if not in the recent attack, we never heard of somebody being arrested or prosecuted. Probably if people have been arrested and prosecuted, this last episode would not have come up.
Exactly.
And possibly if before now, Nigeria as a nation has taken a step by sending delegates to meet with the government of South Africa, this last episode would not have occurred. So I want to believe they are both concerned, but they are not serious about it.
Okay, thank you so much for that point. And before I let you go, we know one of the challenges confronting the country at the moment is the issue of insecurity. We have some foreign technocrats that are willing, or let's say that want to come to Nigeria to set up businesses as one of the ways to curb the rate of unemployment in the country. But if Nigeria as a country refuse to tidy up its end in the area of insecurity, it's still going to be an impediment to allowing these foreign technocrats to come to the country for investment. Apart from this insecurity, apart from other challenges that we know that is confronting the country, do you see any other impediment to the development of this country, particularly in relationship with the external countries?
Okay, thank you. There might be other challenges. I think an adage says charity begins at home. The issue of patriotism is very, very important. As Nigerians, many of us are not patriotic enough, and we can do anything so many people can do anything to enrich themselves, so to say. We pledge to be faithful, to be loyal to our nation, which we have not actually been doing. We have so many people working with the government. Unfortunately, we have so many bad eggs amidst them. Where they're supposed to represent the nation well, where memorandum of understanding are being signed, they are majorly concerned about their pockets and not about the interest
of their citizens.
There could have been instances where foreigners are willing to come, but the people that were sent to negotiate will not allow them to come as long as those investors are not willing to rub their palms. And these are people that have conscience. They would not like to mortgage their conscience. They would rather look for another country and take their investment there. So this issue of patriotism, I think, is very, very important. Yesterday, I was discussing with an individual who retires from a multinational company, and he was sharing with me how some of these foreign companies are exploiting we Nigerians. And the government, when we talk about government, we are actually talking about the people.
Exactly. The people makes the government.
People makes the government. And the people that makes the government are not doing the needful. They are not doing the needful. So the issue of patriotism is equally important. But over and above all, an enabling environment is the most important factor that brings in investors into the nation.
Exactly. When this issue of xenophobic attacks started, and one of the responding to it is the Arel Nokakafo Chief Gani Adams, and he said that Nigerians in South Africa, that South Africans are accommodating and they are nice people, that Nigerians in South Africa should stop unnecessary display of wealth. And I want to believe that we have some Nigerians, not only in South Africa, in other parts of the world, that still go about their normal lives, do businesses, ride good cars, live very, very well, and there was no attack in that. Is it because we are both African countries, that is why this attack is more eminent between the two countries?
Well, just as we pointed out the other time, everywhere there are good people and there are bad people. I don't want to concord completely that is because we are Africans. In other countries of the world, we have cases of shooting, cases of bombing,
which was not widely reported as that of South Africa.
Okay. So it is all about mindset. It is all about mindset. Yes, as it were, people who are professionals were not affected, unlike the people at this other side. Well, it's all about mindset. It's all about thinking. An adage says, "An hungry man
is an angry man."
Is an angry man. This might be one of the reasons, and you discover that it is the people that at the
receiving hand.
The receiving hand that will first react. Because these people felt our jobs have been taken away. You did not only take away our job, you are dangling our wealth before us. It's like adding salt upon injury. I think the most important thing is that people have to be educated. People have to be enlightened. People have to be trained. I don't know, but if proper investigation is conducted, you might discover that people that started this attacking, they are the less educated, the less enlightened set of people.
Well, that's a good point, and I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show this morning to discuss this issue of Nigeria and our diplomatic relationship in respect of the xenophobic attack on Nigerians in South Africa. Many thanks for coming on the program this morning, sir. We do really appreciate your coming.
Thank you.
It's on this note we'll be calling it today on this Tuesday morning of Frontline today, and like we've been saying that for Nigerian and every other countries across the world to enjoy the benefits that comes with both bilateral and multilateral relationship. The bulk of the work is on our hands. If you are a Nigerian and you find yourself in any part of the world, try and be a good citizen of the country wherever you find yourself. You raised the point about patriotism, which is very, very important. Being a good ambassador of the country where you come from it's going to help you to have a good living, to live peacefully with every other persons around you in any part of the world you find yourself. And I think it's high time the international organization also sits up and ensure that the aims and the objective of setting up this organization is being fulfilled for all the countries that are members of this organization to enjoy the benefits of settling up this organization. It is on this note we will be calling it a day on this episode of Frontline this morning. Once again, thank you to Reverend Dr. Kolawon for coming on the show. I'll see you again next week by God's grace. It's goodbye for now.